Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, back for the 101 best games of all time according to me. Today we're going to be tackling numbers 30 through 21. We are getting super high on this list. Enjoy. Number 30 is an abstract game by Queen Games called Glux, G-L-U-X. This is a game that didn't get a lot of fanfare, and I'm not sure even it did that well, but it is an amazing abstract game. It's for 2 to 4 players. Now, the way this works is essentially like an area control game, where you're trying to control different regions on the board, because if you control the regions, you're getting the points for that, and you're trying to have the most points in the end. Now, as you do this, is you're pulling little tokens from a bag, and they're essentially kind of like dice. They're exactly like dice where they have 2 sides to it. And just like on normal dice, like there's a 1 on one side and a 6 on the other, and a 2 and a 5 and a 3 and a 4. So you're pulling it out and you're deciding which side to place down. And that's important because wherever you place that, you have a little starting area. When you place from that one, that's how many spots you're going away. So if I place a 3, the next one I play, when I draw another token from my bag and it's my next turn, if I want to place adjacent to that one, I will be placing 3 spots away from that. So let's say 3 spots away, I place that and I place a 6. Well, now I can place either 6 away from that one or 3 away from the other one. So your choices start out very small, but as you expand over the board, you have more and more and more choices, and you're trying to set yourself up to jump into some of those areas. But it gets even better because you add up the total number of pips that each player has in those areas to score, and 6 sounds great, right? Right, but if you put a 6 in there, that means your next piece adjacent to that one's probably going to jump it outside of that area, and you won't be able to score it because you're going to jump 6 pieces away because of the number 6. So sometimes you're trying to like jump far and get into places. Sometimes you're trying to just place a bunch of small numbers in those, so you're just jumping around and getting a lot of different things. But you can also be covered by other players. You can even cover yourself. You can block other players. They can't jump over you. So again, it's an abstract game, but the decision space here is an amazing thing. The arc in this game is great. If you like games that have simple mechanisms but tons and tons and tons of depth that's abstract, this is one of those. Glux. Number 29 is an older deduction game from Days of Wonder called Mystery Express. This is one of the ones where back in the day they were the only ones doing great productions like this. Awesome production. This is Clue on steroids. In Clue, you're trying to find the murderer and you're trying to find the weapon in the room and the person and things like that. But in that game, there's only one of each of the cards. And when you see one, you cross it off and you know that's not it. And you're trying to find which of the cards were the secret ones of each of the different types. In this game, you're not only trying to find one card of everything, there's 2 cards of everything. So you have to see 2 of the same cards to make sure that's not it. And to make it harder, in between rounds, some cards move from player to player. And so if you see a card like the knife in one round, and you see it in a different round, you can't be 100% sure if it's the same card you saw before or another copy of that. So you're trying to find 2 of the same things within the same round. Now, even after some of the rounds, if you can track whether or not certain types of cards got passed with your note taking, you can say, you know what, this person didn't pass any of those cards into that round, they still have the knife. If I see the knife from somebody else and nobody else has grabbed that color of card from them, I can be sure it's the second one. So there's a lot of trickiness, and this essentially is like a Euro action selection game where you're spending a certain amount of actions to go to a different room in the Mystery Express, and you're doing different things like asking players about cards, taking certain cards, having players show cards, all different things like that, but it's an action selection economy as to what you're doing. It's a very tough deduction game, but it's one I love a ton. It's way out of print and really hard to get, but Mystery Express, fantastic. If you love Clue and you want something to be brain burnery harder, you're gonna pay a lot for it if you find it in this open market, but this one is a gem, Mystery Express. Number 28 is a card crafting game where you're changing the values in what's in your cards. This is called Custom Heroes from AEG. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Custom Heroes is a ladder climbing style card game for 2 to 6 players where you're trying to be the one to get rid of all your cards first. And when cards are played, maybe by the same player, you have to meet or beat 2 5s, for example. It might look like I can't beat 2 5s because they have to be the same number. But by using these transparent cards, we can upgrade our heroes. So now it's added a glove and a foam finger, but now the modified is 2 6s, which beats this. You're trying to get rid of all your cards. Some of these have special abilities, some of them even trump. You can spend them to activate, or if you don't use it, you actually gain currency for later. There's a whole stack of these upgrade transparent cards in here, and then depending on the amount of players, the better players get better points, closer to 10 to win. If you have 10 and you go out first, you win. The players who have come in last in each of the rounds get more upgrades and more currency to help them throughout the game. I'm a big fan of card games, trick-taking games, ladder climbing games. This is one of those. And this one takes that to a different level, where you start off and all the cards are sort of the same, but you can use the economy of the coins and such to use powers to upgrade and make your heroes custom. And some of them, it's funny, they have like the little cabbage, or they have the hot dog, or they have a weapon, and it's making them higher or lower. But the cool thing is you're deciding when to do that, and it compounds the tough choices in a ladder climbing game, which is, do I stay in this one and put this card in here, but it's gonna break up a really good set I wanna use later? And it compounds that, because now you're like, oh, I could add this little thing to this card, and now that 6 becomes a 7, now I have 3 7s, so I can do this. Each card can have up to 3 different upgrades in it. And the cool thing is you're doing this, and at the end of the round, all the cards get shuffled up and they get dealt out again. So you might have just made a really cool card to win something for that round, but guess what? That's probably gonna be in someone else's hands next round. And then you remember, oh, you know what? There's a 14 out there when they normally don't go up that high, because I made that. And you know that, and it just adds to the depth of the game as the game goes on. Every game feels so different because you're making all these different custom heroes, all these different abilities that are going in there. It's awesome. It is my favorite ladder climbing game, Custom Heroes. Number 27 is an abstract strategy game from Reiner Knizia called Axio, A-X-I-O. Now this is a follow-up or a re-implementation of the very popular Ingenious, which was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres, and in any other given year it probably would have won. Now this is essentially a tile-laying game where you're placing tiles and you're looking in each direction from that tile. And the tiles have 2 different colors on them, or shapes if you're colorblind. And you're looking, for each of the half of the tiles, you're looking in the other 3 directions from that, and you're counting how many other things in an unbroken line of that color. So if I place a green down there and there's 3 other greens next to it, then I'm gonna get 3 green points. Now the coolest thing is this uses that, Reiner Knizia scoring, where at the end of the game, your lowest color or your lowest score of any of the colors is your score. So you have to work on different colors, and you have to balance that, just like many of his other scoring games like that. But the cool thing that this brought to a twist is, number one, it changed from Ingenious from hexes to squares. And what this allows you to do is, if you're able to close in a square, you put a pyramid there and you get one of everything that it surrounds it. And so you're trying not to set other players up to get those pyramids. And so you want to do something, but you're like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's going to get them this, it's going to get them a lot of points here. Also, if you're able to get one color all the way to the end, you get an immediate turn, and that can really change the game at the end of the game. If you like pure abstract strategy games that scale great from 2 to 4 players, and it's fantastic, just easy to teach, but lots of depth, Axio is it. Number 26 is a hidden movement game, a pretty big one called Letters from Whitechapel. This is a fantastic game where one player plays Jack the Ripper, and all other players play the inspectors. They're trying to get him and arrest him. And what happens is it's played over 3 main rounds, and each round, Jack has a home that he picks at the beginning of the game, and each round he has to get to he has to get back home, but it's the same one. So maybe round 1 you learn some clues about where he's at, because he has to tell you if he's been to where you're searching. And so over the course of the game, first round you might go, oh, okay, he's on this half of the board. And then the second one you're like, well, we've narrowed it down to maybe this quarter of the board. And then the next round you're like, oh, we're trying to get him close, and we know where he's gonna go kinda, but we don't know exactly, and you're trying to find him. And the game is tense, it's awesome. It's a longer game, probably about 90 minutes. But it is a fantastic game. I think the last time I did my top 100, this was number 3. It was super high. It's dropped a little bit because it's longer. It's harder to get to the table. There's some different phases each round, which adds a little bit to the fiddliness, but also adds to the strategy, and you kind of have to relearn the game every time you play it. But it is fantastic. If you like a sort of a bigger, epic, hidden movement game, this is one of the best ones out there, if not the best. Letters from Whitechapel. Number 25 is a spy game called Covert, and this is from Renegade Game Studios. This was my game of the year it came out. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. In Covert, you're trying to finish secret missions by getting certain things like shoes and credit cards. Sometimes you're going to be trying to break codes by manipulating the code on the door and being able to get certain aspects to help you complete missions later. You'll be manipulating codes by moving adjacent numbers. You'll be adding dice to try to break codes to get things like the tape machine. You'll be placing dice to be able to take actions later, but they gotta be adjacent to where dice already are. You'll be moving agents to the right cities to complete missions. You'll be picking up intel from other players, which will allow you to get more information. You'll be using your character's special ability throughout the game. You'll be using special tokens to do different things like manipulate dice and break rules of the games, and you'll be using these agency cards to fly to certain regions, use to complete missions, or even use for a special ability for multi-use cards. This game has so many clever things going on with it. The worker placement with the dice and going to a specific spot and placing a die affects where other players are going to play there and what dice they can play there. And I like that. You can kind of sort of block other people indirectly or directly with that. Taking those different actions, getting different missions, going to the little code decipher cracking thing and trying to get the codes to get different things that you need in order to do different missions. And some of those missions require you to have different people in different areas, and then you're picking up cubes from other players and doing different things with that. There's just a lot going on here, but it doesn't feel bloated. It feels very streamlined and elegant. And it's got a cool theme, and some of those missions give you just a lot of points. Some of them give you not as many points, but they give you sort of like an engine building, like, hey, I always have this item for the rest of the time. It is a fantastic blend of mechanisms with a great theme, Covert. Number 24 is a game that came out just last year, and it's this high on this list. It's called Whistle Mountain from Bezier Games. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Whistle Mountain is a worker placement, tile placement, and resource management strategy game for 2 to 4 players. You'll be flying one of your cool airships, the hot air balloon, blimp, or dreadnought to forge or collect. You'll be placing onto the grid or machines to gather all adjacent resources from scaffolding, like coal, iron, gold, and water. But you'll also activate the machine's abilities that you're on and ones that you're adjacent to. You'll also be flying to docks, which allow you to spend resources to perform different actions, like gathering machines, or scaffolding that you'll be placing in the future, or gaining cards that gain you cool abilities when played, like the treasure chest that gains you 2 whistles, which are wild resources, or gaining you upgrades. And these give you ongoing ability and endgame points. You can bring all your airships back to your board to forge, which allows you to move a worker from your barracks or rescue one from your whirlpool, which will be worth negative points at the end of the game. You'll be building scaffolding, giving you points for every adjacent scaffolding and machine. You can build machines onto scaffolding, first promoting workers there onto the tower for awards and endgame points, and the built machines gain you points too. But you have to be careful because as you build higher, the snow begins to melt, raising the water level higher and higher, waterlogging machines, making them useless, and flooding your workers to the whirlpool. You'll have to use timely and clever worker placement, forward-thinking tile placement, and ongoing resource management to win the game. Yeah, this game blew me away last year. It was my strategy game of the year. I love this game. It takes that polyomino style play, but takes it to a different world because it's worker placement as well. But you're building these polyominoes onto the board, and as you're building these, you're literally building the board for that game. So every time you play this game, it's going to be different. Every game, different machines come out that you're going to be placing on those polyominoes that are going to give different abilities. You're going to have different cards that have different abilities. So you're constantly trying to figure out, in this game right now, with the abilities and machines available, what combo out there can I build and use and exploit? Because when you build a machine and do stuff like that, sure, you're getting stuff when you build it, but other players are going to be able to go there later and use it as well. So there's a lot of interesting ways to play this game, tons of different strategies, tons of replayability. If you like polyomino style placement, but you also like heavier Euro games with worker placement and resource management and tough decisions, this one tops that list, Whistle Mountain. Number 23 is an engine building game from Simon called Gizmos. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Gizmos is an engine building game for 2 to 4 players. It has this great dispenser where you'll be picking energy marbles out from here and sometimes randomly from inside. You'll be storing this energy in a ring that you'll be spending to purchase cards. Turns are simple and you only do one of 4 things on your turn, like filing and reserving a card from the display, or picking a specific marble, adding it to your resources, or building, which is spending resources for either a card you reserved or one in the display. Or reserving and researching, which is allowing you to go through a press your luck mechanism to try to get the card that you're really looking for. But the game's all about the engine. Like anytime I pick a black marble, I get a random one. Or anytime I pick a yellow or black, I get a random one. Anytime I build yellows, I get to pick anything I want. Or blue or red, I get points. You can convert energy to others and increase your capacity, and it's all about your engine. Now, this is my favorite engine building game, and Phil Walker Harding, he's one of my favorite designers. So you've seen a ton of games of his on this list, and this is just one of those games where you start off and you start doing things and it starts a little slow and then quickly it ramps up to like, hey, I'm gonna pick a black marble, which now allows me to pick this marble, which now allows me to do this, which now allows me to do this. And towards the end, you have these ginormous turns where you're doing 4 or 5 things at once, and it's super exciting. It's sort of a race. You're trying to get to as many of these completions as possible, but the strategies change depending on what gizmos you build. Every time you're building this game, the gizmos in different games, you're gonna have different strategies and working on different things. So it's sort of like a puzzle. It's a very puzzly engine building game, cool theme, great look, awesome table presence with the marbles and the holder and all that stuff. Fantastic, my favorite engine builder, Gizmos. Number 22 is yet another back-to-back Phil Walker Harding game. This is a polyomino style tile placement game called Baron Park. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Baron Park is a tile drafting and placement game for 2 to 4 players where you'll be placing different things, like an outhouse, on your own park. And when you cover symbols, like the truck, you're able to get different homes for like koala bears or pandas or polar bears or goji bears, and they're different points depending on how fast you get to them. Each turn you're only placing 1 tile, but again, as you cover things, you're getting more tiles. So on your next turn, you're able to do like this, and sometimes you're able to add to your park by getting on the construction spot and being able to add to your park. You're trying to have 4 of these boards by the end of the game and trying to fill them up. And with better boards comes better items. Because with the tractor, you're able to get huge enclosures for a lot of points and taking up big pieces of your park. And once you're able to fill up a specific board, you'll be able to get a bear statue for points, and the faster you get them, the bigger the points. And the game ends when someone fills up all 4 spots in their park and then count up all the points. And there's different end game goals you can add for an advanced gamer variant. Yeah, this is my favorite polyomino style game and my favorite Phil Walker Harding game. This game is fantastic. Some of the polyomino style games or tile placement games, they mess with my head. Like 3-dimensional ones, I don't really grasp that well. 2D ones, yes, but it depends on the pieces. This one just hits everything right. It's sort of like engine building a little bit, where you're placing a tile and you're covering things and you know that you're gonna get tiles or choices of types of tiles because of where you place. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna plan 2 or 3 turns in advance. I'm gonna go here and get these 2, then I'm gonna put this here and then I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna put this here and get that. I'm gonna try to get the majorities of the panda bears over here. I'm gonna be the first one to get this tile here and get a bunch of things. So there's a lot of stuff going on. You're racing to finish boards. You're racing to try to get the last of a few of the types of tiles that are there. You're trying to finish these advanced goals that you should always play with because it's not that advanced. But it makes the game so much better. Plus the game has an expansion that takes a family weight game to a mind-melting gamer game. And so this is fantastic. It's easy to teach. You can play it with pretty much any group. It's a good welcoming game, but it's also, it can be a gamer game with the expansion. It's quick, it's fun, it's a different puzzle every time. Man, love it, Baron Park. Last one for this list, number 21, is a big, epic 4X style game from Stonemaier Games called Scythe. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Scythe is a 1 to 5 player strategy game where each of you will be your unique faction and having one of these awesome characters to help you throughout the game. And you'll also be joined by some of these cool mechs. Over the course of the game, you're trying to be the richest faction by completing objectives, controlling areas, and having resources. And depending on how popular you are, we'll tell you how much each of those are worth. You'll be managing your turns on a playmat, which is different for each player and has some subtle variations. Over the course of the game, you'll be moving your workers to different spots in this 1920s alternate history Eastern Europa world. You'll be producing different resources like oil. You'll be spending those to create mechs, which you'll be able to use to then carry workers throughout the game. You'll also be using a streamlined combat system to resolve battles. You'll be thematically brought into the world and making different choices with encounters, and trying to complete objectives, which will score you lots of points in the end, and whoever has the most money at the end is the winner. Yeah, I love this game. I mean, most people say, hey, Dan only plays light games. No, I don't. For a game that has to be, if a game's longer than 60 or 90 minutes, for every half hour longer than that, the game has to be that much more epic and great for me to want to play it over and over. And Scythe is one of those. It's not a short game, not an easy game to teach to new players, but man, is it awesome. First of all, the world that they built with this artwork is amazing. You're so engaged, and even when you're drawing cards that are like, hey, make this decision, they just look beautiful and they make sense, and it's sort of a choose your own adventure style that get different things. But you're starting in your own area, you're working your way out, you've got two different boards every game, so your strategies are going to change, the synergies of those boards and how they work or not work together are going to be different every game. Trying to make it so you can do both a top action and a bottom action on the same turn, trying to work that engine together, whether you're going to go for power or the threat of combat or building up the windmills and such, and all these different ways and all these different strategies, and every time you play the game it's going to feel a little different depending on the boards you have, the strategies you have, the faction you're playing. It's amazing. There's a lot going on, but it's still very streamlined to effect. I just love it. It's got so much going on for it. It doesn't come out as often as I'd like because it is a bigger game. You got a lot of setup. I've even had my miniatures painted by Rob Oren. Thanks, Rob, for doing that. And this is just one of my favorite games. Number 21, Scythe. All right, whether you have 30 to 21. Now, in a few days, I'm going to put out another video about this list with Greg Dixon, where we're going to go back and forth. He's going to try to debunk my list, and we're going to talk about some of the experiences that we've had with some of these games. This is sort of like a short version of why it's on the list, but also mostly how do the games work, where this next video is going to be mostly just us talking. It's basically you're going to be sitting in our living room listening to both of us discuss our experiences with this game. Subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't to make sure you don't miss that one. Been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.